We all love that classic tavern start in D&D. There's a familiarity there to it, I think. But if you're not careful, it's really easy for that opening scene to just stall out and create a lot of maybe misconstrued expectations for that first session. And the typical setup usually goes something like this. Your players are sitting in a room, their characters don't know each other yet, and the location is bustling. Am I right? Now, the thing about that is that it puts a ton of pressure on everyone to break the ice right from scratch. Right from scratch? Right from the word go? Right from get-go? I'm really bad at this. Now, I think, segueing from that, human interaction can already be really awkward when meeting people for the first time in real life. So why would you force that same awkwardness into a game? And let's think about that for a moment. What even makes a campaign awkward to begin with? And usually it boils down to two distinct psychological friction points. One is that nobody knows each other, and two, they're in a boring location. So let's look at the first one. Nobody knows each other. When you tell your players you all stand in a room, but your characters are complete strangers, you are accidentally creating this massive paradox, because in real life, when we meet strangers, our natural social instinct is caution. We don't share a lot of things. We polite talk. We feel things out. We don't immediately share our deepest secrets and then agree to go risk our lives to fight a nest of giant spiders together or whatever.
Why spiders? Why couldn't we follow the butterflies?
But as players, that we know when we're in that situation that we're supposed to team up. So you force your players into this weird, unnatural limbo where they have to somehow invent a reason on the fly right there in some sort of meta cloud for their brooding assassin to suddenly trust this chaotic bard that they met 3 minutes ago. And it puts this burden, the entire burden really, of pacing and team dynamics directly onto the players before they've figured out how to roleplay their own characters. They probably don't even know what their voice sounds like or are still testing it out. And then you compound that problem by putting them in a boring location. And by boring, I don't mean that the tavern isn't beautifully described. I don't mean that you can't have a fun tavern, but dynamically it's stagnant, in my opinion.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
A standard tavern scene is this sort of closed loop. There's no external pressure. There's no active threat. There's no ticking clock. There's no immediate problem that requires a solution, because this is a place where people come to relax. And on top of that, most people, if they've never played D&D, already know the trope that you all meet in a tavern. It's probably one of the most well-known aspects of D&D, other than you're rolling some dice. So when a player comes into your session and the first thing that you tell them is that everybody's meeting in a tavern, I think, one, it sort of makes all of the assumptions that they had about the game true in their mind, which then creates sort of unnecessary barriers that they may not even know that they're creating. Like, I'm going to sound weird, or I'm going to feel nerdy, or whatever. You could literally hear that. This is a directional microphone. I'm pretty sure, editor, if you could hear that, that's my neighbor with their car. That's absolutely wild. There's no reason. Neighbor, if you're watching this, you should be ashamed. There are children playing. When a location has zero momentum, it relies entirely on the characters to generate that energy. And if the characters are strangers, they don't have the chemistry to generate that energy yet, so then the game grinds to this weird halt. You're essentially dropping your players into a blank sandbox and then asking them to build a castle rather than giving them a crumbling wall and asking them how they want to defend it. Tired of your players walking into a tavern and you've got nothing prepared? The bar is, made of wood? Boring. Introducing Describe. The radical new way to sound like a legendary dungeon master without writing a single word. All the cool kids are doing it. Thousands of professionally written descriptions, taverns, monsters, dungeons, items, and more. Need music? Use Describe. It's got ambience so good you'll feel like you are getting eaten by an owlbear. Oh no! Just plug them in, drop in the text, and blast your players straight into cinematic immersion. Describe, because your world deserves more than, it's wooden. Use my code at checkout. So instead of letting that awkwardness kill a vibe, you need to do things a little differently, or at least that's what I think. That's how I do things. And it starts before anyone ever rolls a d20 at all. The first thing that I do is you need a session 0 in your pocket. A lot of DMs run a session 0 to talk about things like safety tools, house rules, character stats. All of that's great, but a session 0 in your pocket also means that you're proactively manufacturing that narrative that you want with your players. You don't leave it up to chance on game night if you can avoid it. So before anyone sits down at the table, at least before anybody sits down at my table, what I do is I work with my players to establish at least one pre-existing thread that connects them. It doesn't mean that they have to necessarily know about this thread, but I think that in some way you want to kind of tie them together. So you don't need a 20-page shared backstory. They don't have to be like childhood best friends, for example. You just need them to share an anchor. So maybe that's a mutual ally. So they might have a mentor that they share together that went missing recently. They might have a mutual enemy. So maybe there's a local noble that screwed them all over in different ways. Or it could be as simple as an employment contract that they all signed a few weeks ago or whatever. Building that thread into your character creation phase with your players helps you completely bypass the why are we teaming up part, which is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to get through in the first few sessions. So that way, when the curtain finally does rise and they begin role-playing, they're not this mismatched group of weirdos that are sizing each other up from across the bar. They are a crew. They may not like each other very much, and that's okay, but at the very least, they have a reason to look at each other, to trust each other at a superficial level and move forward together. For a pro tip, I also like to make that a thread that they can't ignore sometimes. So you might want to do something like making them have to work together in order to cure a sickness or a curse. Baldur's Gate 3 did that exact thing with the Mind Flayer tadpoles. It was the driving force that brought that entire party together in the game. So for example, I might give player A a specific local rumor that they overheard on the road. And I might give player B a secret map that they found on a dead scout, and I'll give player C a direct warning from a local NPC telling them to like watch their back or something. Which, by the way, if you want to watch me take on an honor mode run in Baldur's Gate 3 while doing it, trying to also get the Jack of all trades achievement, go check out my Patreon. I release a new episode every week or so. If you want to just watch me talk nonsense and play Baldur's Gate 3, go check it out. Now, the second piece of that puzzle, running a brief one-on-one session beforehand. So this is, I still consider this kind of part of session 0. And I think that there's sort of some hesitation around one-on-one sessions, because when people hear one-on-one sessions, the DM is usually panicking because they think that it means that they're going to add like 5 separate 3-hour games to their schedule, and it doesn't. I don't think it needs to mean that. What I'm talking about is a 10-minute phone call, a Discord voice chat, or even just like text role-playing for a few days over phone or on Discord before the campaign kicks off. The whole goal there is really, really simple. You just want your players to play through the exact sort of micro moments before their characters arrived in the region where you're starting the game. So they have an idea, and at the very least, some sort of information, a piece of information that gives them a better understanding of why they are where they are, as opposed to trying to figure it out through the narrative and through your descriptions and through them asking questions. At least they feel like they have a grasp on their character. Now, when you do this, you're eliminating that blank slate problem. When session 1 actually starts, your players aren't just sitting there waiting for you to feed them plot hooks anymore. They have puzzle pieces in their pockets. Say that 5 times fast. Player A might say something like, hey, I heard that the woods in the north are infested. And then player B might say something like, wait, I actually have a map of those woods. And now the players are driving the conversation. They're trading secrets with each other. They're building chemistry naturally because you gave them the currency that they needed to do so, the ammunition that they needed to drive that role-playing forward. And finally, what I like to do is consider starting that very first session in media res, which is just a fancy term for in the middle of something exciting. So if you think about that traditional opening, you spend 10 minutes describing the architecture of the tavern, the smell of the stew, the climate of the town. It's a great mental picture, but it's extremely passive. It forces players into a defensive mindset where they're waiting for something to happen. So instead, what I think you can do is just jump right past the preamble, that prologue, and drop them directly into the boiling pot. So you want your campaign to start in a tavern, that's fine. But you don't have to start with them ordering drinks. You could start the campaign at the exact second that the front tavern window shatters because of a fireball that hits the bar. That is way more exciting. Same basic premise. Now you have them meeting in a tavern. There's a fireball, and because of the flames and because of the confrontation, now they have a reason to work together because they seem to be the only people in the tavern that have any sense of what's going on. or at least how to defend. Now, when you start in the middle of an active scenario like that, like a chaotic street battle or a desperate escape from a dungeon or a jail or something like that, you're naturally bypassing those two biggest friction points. And the reason for that is that first, an immediate crisis helps get rid of all of that social awkwardness. In the middle of an ambush, the characters don't have the luxury of sitting around questioning each other's motives or debating whether their backstories align or anything like that, right? Action breeds alignment. Action is going to drive a lot more of the story than waiting for your players to react to something. The rogue doesn't need to know the paladin's religious code when they're both being shot at by goblins, right? They just need that person to hold the front line for them so that they can survive the next 6 seconds, the next 12 seconds. The reality is that that crisis creates a mechanical, immediate need for teamwork. And that adrenaline that comes not only through the players at the table, but also through the characters, helps bond that party together. And it does it much faster than like 2 hours of forced small talk. And then second, starting in the action gives the location immediate momentum. It gives your story momentum. You get to decide why they're under attack and start putting some of those seeds in front of them, those little breadcrumbs to pull on the larger narrative. And I think it just helps to give them something to work with as opposed to just dropping them into this large sandbox. If you like the sandbox game, that's totally fine. That's how I run my games, but I think that sometimes you need a little guiding force, especially with newer players. And I think that that's part of your job as the DM, is to help sort of give them a little nudge to break down those walls and to start having fun. Those are the things that I like to do in order to make them sort of work together better, so that they feel the need to like fight together, protect each other, give them a shared victory. And so that way, when they finally sit down to catch their breath and talk, they're not complete strangers anymore because they're kind of a battle-tested crew and they have this shared history, and it gives them something exciting to talk about and it gives them a puzzle to pick at. Let me know what you do to start your initial sessions to make them more exciting. How do you start your sessions? How do you keep them energetic? What sorts of fun things have you done over your games? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Forge on, my friends, and remember, taverns can be exciting too if you blow them up.